Hey entrepreneurs, your challenge this week is about increasing your willpower and specifically using metacognition in order to accomplish that. So metacognition just means thinking about thinking, right? So instead of just being the thinker, you're thinking about how you're thinking so that you can use that to your advantage to get yourself to do more of what you want to do. So the point that I'm going to make in this weekly challenge is that willpower is actually very malleable, much more so than people think. And it's something that you can change better by reframing what's happening in the story of your thoughts instead of using effort. So if there's one thing you take away from this week's challenge, I just want you to remember this. It's better to use reframing, metacognition, instead of effort when your willpower is low. When you show up and you want to get stuff done, you're just not feeling it, go back to reframing, to switching the entire story of what's happening instead of trying to use effort to push through. So let me tell you a brief story about one of my clients who worked with me for about 6 months, often going back and forth on Voxer, trying to get himself to actually sit down and do the work. He had achieved that level of success where some entrepreneurs find that once the pressure is off, now they suddenly can't make themselves work. Sometimes entrepreneurs, when they hit a certain milestone that they feel like kind of makes them feel secure financially or feel like they've accomplished something, they actually find that they feel more motivated to push forward. And others of us have a reverse reaction to that, where we actually feel less motivated. You show up and it's harder to push yourself because now you feel secure and you feel like you've accomplished what it was. This is especially true for those of you who were fear motivated as you came into this. And that was the case for one of my clients who I want to tell you about, who was really struggling to get himself to sit down and even just do a 90-minute time-boxed focused sprint on some stuff that he really did have the ability to turn into serious progress and serious revenue for his company, but he just wasn't doing it. And so he would ask me, like, why am I not doing this? And one of the conversations we got into was about reframing it. So instead of trying to push with more effort, I was encouraging him instead to change the story that's going on in the back of his thoughts about what this even means. What does the time box mean? And where is the willpower? To understand this better, I want to tell you about Michael Inchlich, who he's a professor of psychology at the Toronto University. It's the University of Toronto Lab of Social Neuroscience, I think is where he's working. And he has an alternative theory to ego depletion. So ego depletion was a theory within psychology that kind of laid out this idea that our motivation, our willpower is like a resource, like a gas tank. And if you use it up, it's gone. Or it's like a muscle that if you exercised it, if you went to the gym and did a whole bunch of chin-ups, that your lats and your biceps are going to be depleted and you're gonna have to rest for a while before you use them again. So there's some truth to that. There's no doubt that there's some truth to exercising willpower, taking a break from exercising willpower to come back, but it's only part of the truth. And Michael Inchlich has opened up the possibility with his research suggesting that willpower actually acts more like an emotion. And so just like you don't run out of anger or joy, those things emerge naturally based on the narrative running in the back of your mind about what's happening in your life. Those are feelings that emerge from your perceptions and from, the neurobiology of, your state at any given moment. And in the same way, willpower is something that ebbs and flows based on those narratives running in the back of your thoughts. And so when I started working with my client on trying to increase his motivation, his desire to sit down and actually do the work, he at one point sent me a message on Voxer and he's like, I think I get it. Like everything you've been telling me, I've just noticed there's this theme to it. It all comes down to reframing. Like if I can just reframe what's happening from I'm making myself miserable by doing this, and this is something I have to force myself to do, or I have to trick myself. Instead, if I can reframe it as what I actually want, if I can take it from being like this oatmeal that I'm trying to make myself eat, and instead I can create this perception that this is the chocolate cake, like this is the thing I want, then I don't have to use effort to make myself sit down and do this. Instead, it just naturally comes up. Now it's like, oh, apologizing to my friends or family because I'm sorry, I just really want to get this done at work. We completely switch the narrative so that The narrative creates the willpower. So remember, willpower is malleable, and it's better to use reframing, metacognition, instead of effort when you're struggling. So how do you do this? One of the best ways to do this is to use skills that many of you already have. A lot of you guys are copywriters or understand building offers and funnels well enough to know, like the concept of timer, for example, that time, identity, money, energy, reputation, those things that motivate a purchase. When you're writing sales copy, you naturally try to tap into that, right? You try to tap into those underlying desires that people have, and you bring them to the surface so that you can leverage those underlying natural desires that we all have toward them wanting, thirsting, being hungry for what you have on offer. And so what I'm recommending to you on a metacognitive level is that you use that on yourself. If you ask yourself, well, why do I want to do this? What's the point of making myself sit down to do this? And try to connect it back to the things you want. Maybe you want more time, and you know, if you can just create this system for some staff to run or for some outsourced agency to take over, you can buy back some of your time. Maybe it has something to do with the identity. Like you want that identity as a person who's highly productive, or someone who lived life to the fullest. Maybe it is about money, and maybe what you need to do is pause to think for a moment, like, okay, this effort will get me that result. And you just need to connect in your own mind something you already know, but you need to bring it to the surface of your thoughts. That's metacognition. That's using a reframe. Now, a lot of people benefit from creating visualizations that are a little bit more clear and crisp in the mind's eye, almost like you're watching a visual of something that brings up an emotion. I know somebody that when he would lift weights, right before he'd do a set of exercise that took a lot of exertion, he would visualize a scenario where he was trying to save his family from pirates, or save himself from a group of people who are attacking him on the street. And he would visualize that. He would just imagine himself in that scenario. And what happens, of course, is the mind responds to our imagination on an emotional level almost the same way it does to something happening in real life. And that's why if I asked you to visualize vividly enough, taking a lemon and cutting it in half and smelling the citrus and seeing the little spritz of juice as you bend it back and bite into it, if you visualize that clearly enough, with enough sensory modalities involved, your mouth begins to salivate. In fact, I have to swallow right now because I've done that enough times as a part of a hypnosis protocol that I helped a psychologist develop a hypnosis rating scale back in the day in a hospital setting. And I used that same strategy to explain something to people. And one of the tricks with hypnosis is actually to put yourself in a slight hypnotic state to guide someone else into a hypnotic state. Anyway, long story, but the point is that you can generate a physiological reaction in yourself by intensely visualizing something that is not even real. And so sometimes if I say timer, that's like too logical for people. And you need to go one layer deeper, take one of those things, time, energy, identity, money, reputation, and you need to put it into a story that is visual, that you can see it happening in your mind's eye. And that generates the emotion, that generates the narrative, that creates the willpower to sit down and get stuff done. So the other thing is just to use short sprints interspersed with breaks. It's hard to build up your willpower to really focus on something if the narrative in the back of your mind that you're ignoring, that you're pretending is not there, but your subconscious knows is there, is that this is a marathon and I'm never going to take a break and I'm just going to do this for the foreseeable future. And we're coming into winter and it's, I have 12 hours to go. Like the childlike part of you that wants to just play and have fun is not going to go for that. It's going to put on the brakes, subconsciously slowing you down. And so you want to work in short sprints. You want to grab a timer and say, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to take a break and read the news and for 5 minutes, get a drink, come back, and then I'll decide which thing to do next or look at my time box schedule and tackle that. So you want to work in short sprints and you want to write something down on your calendar that you're going to do after work. So you say to yourself, if I finish all of these things, I'm going to enjoy that thing after work more than if I don't finish all this stuff. And again, that shifts the narrative. That's metacognitive thinking that builds up your willpower. And so Today, your challenge is to notice the next time you have the thought, I need to put more effort in, I need to make myself do this, and use that as a cue to remind yourself instead to use metacognition, to use reframing, to change the narrative running in the back of your thoughts such that it doesn't require effort, that your willpower is malleable based on how you frame things. Have a great week. I'll see you soon.